bookstores are considered the third place. The first place is the home. The second place is a place of spiritual growth, churches, synagogues, or wherever you go for that type of connections. And then a third place is the third place that you go for connections. And examples of third places are libraries, coffee shops, places where they congregate, where people can kind of hang out, talk, be in a safe environment, and just have it as a place where they can congregate together. Bookstores are considered third place. They are valuable to the community. What we do is we sell books. What we can't do, and I'll start right off by saying it, is that we cannot compete with Amazon on price. But what we can do is we can provide customer service. We can provide a curated selection. We provide one-on-one. Our customers get to know our staff. They come in and look for certain things. We are just a safe place for everybody. I have a story. I used to teach ethics a while ago for master's program at Rollins, and there was one particular case that was always interesting to me, and I see a lot of similarities here in terms of how we make choices for buying for price, because it really is what people are, when we buy from Amazon, what we're doing is we're buying because of convenience and price. And so there's always the we don't think about it a lot, but there is an ethical component. Now, that's not to say that ethics are defined by a person's own values. There's no right or wrong ethics. It's the ethics that you believe in your heart. And so you can do, so it's a very, very gray area, but there's a situation that I love to talk about. Back in the, in the 1990s, Campbell's Soup was brought under big scrutiny. I don't know if anybody remembers, but they were selling their tomato soup for like 69 cents a can. And there was all of a sudden there was a lot of scrutiny because they had unfair labor practices, and they were hiring unskilled migrant workers and all kinds of things, and paying them, less than minimum wage and all that kind of stuff. So the movement of being kind to your employees and employee relations and good, safe employment practices kind of started with Campbell's tomato soup. So what the interesting thing is that what Campbell's Soup said at the time was that if we raise the price of the soup, they won't buy it. That it's really this is the ethical question. We only do what the market will bear. If the market says we want to buy it at 69 cents, if we raise it to $1, they won't buy it, and someone else is going to come in and they're going to produce a 69-cent can of tomato soup. And so their argument is that it's really up to the consumer of whether or not they feel that it's important to have fair labor practices, and are they willing to pay that extra 40 cents for the can of soup. So it brought on a huge discussion, and we know 20 years later where it's jumped to, and now I was looking up Campbell's Soup today, and they're considered to be one of the most ethical companies in the country. And I make this analogy very similar to Amazon and independent bookstores, because if you choose based solely on price, and if it's a few dollars, sometimes you really have to ask yourself, and it's not, and I'm not here to judge, because if it's your decision that's what's right for you, then there is nobody here to tell you, what you should do. So the real question that you have to ask yourself is that, do you want to have a community bookstore in your area? That's really the question that you have to ask yourself. And at what price would it cost in order to continue to have a community bookstore? I know that when I first opened up 6 years ago, I talked about, people would say to me, oh, how can you, compete now in the world of Amazon? And my classic answer was always, if people want me to stay in Winter Park, I'll stay. If they're not going to support me, then I'll leave. It's okay. Either way, it's okay. I was willing to live with either choice that the community made, because it was really up to the community of whether or not we were going to make it. Books are sold at a very low margin, and we're not we don't get the luxury of dictating price because they're on the back of the book. And the publishers pretty much are pretty firm about, pricing and all that kind of stuff, except when you do huge quantities of 50, 60,000, and then you're back to Amazon and big box stores. So, but I will tell you what we do. So when you're asking yourself the question of whether we want to have a community bookstore in the community, like how important is it? I think about that we connect with all organizations. We connect with schools, we connect with profit and nonprofit organizations. We're a hub for literacy. We promote literacy. We create partnerships to bring in authors. And one of the most important things that what means to me, and I have since had many partnerships, and one that I'm especially proud of is the one with the Jewish Community Center, because we have a Jewish book festival, and they have similar problems with their religious, like I think all religious groups have, and that's how do we, in this time of internet and everything else, how do we bring the young people, how do we congregate together to bring our spirituality and our voice to these young people when they're, busy on their phones and they're not necessarily going to church. Maybe they're going to church, they're still practicing their religion, but maybe they're doing it online, or maybe they're doing it in small groups, but are they showing up to church? And so the JCC was having similar problems. And my thought is that when you talk about culture arts and when you talk about literacy, you reach all walk of life. You reach, your age, your race, your sex, your ethnicity, your economic level makes no difference whatsoever. We're talking about a book and you have access to literacy through libraries, through friends, through go to Goodwill and buy it for 5 cents or whatever. But but to me, it's the literacy and culture arts crosses all platforms, and none of it is political, and it's all based on reading. And it's all been proven that, reading, art, culture arts, any kind of art and reading helps the brain, and it also improves people's ability to be successful in their own lives. And so it's a little bit more of an important we're retail. Yes, we're on a retail street. Yes, we're a bookstore. Yes, we sell books. But to me, it's more of a calling. We're an institution that for a while thought was going to be extinct. I know when I talk about it personally, there was no bookstore in Winter Park for 20 years. I'm from here. I've been here, almost 50 years. And I still, when I first opened up the Winter Park store, I had people coming in every day saying, "Oh, I mourn the day that little professor closed down." And I'm going, "Oh, I know. And, my husband is from Miami, and he hadn't been here he came in the late 80s. And so I'd come home and I'd say, "Oh, 4 times a day, people come in here. They tell me, oh my God, I mourn the day that little professor closed down." And he goes, "Well, when did it close down?" I go, "In the 80s. It's like, but it's still, it's probably not as many, but still people come in and talk about the little professor. They still talk about it. And it was a wonderful bookstore. And I ran into someone who was the Park Avenue CDs that was like third cousin of Little Professor. It was all in the same space. And if anybody's from here that remembers all that going on, but it was kind of like it morphed into a CD store and changed hands a bunch of times. But, so for a long time, there wasn't a bookstore. And that was true with bookstores all over the country. And to me, it's an institution that should not be extinct, in my personal opinion. I think that we provide incredible services to the community, and it's all about literacy. And it's all about community and what we can do for each other. And how we can, I work with the University Club, trying to get them authors for their history Burke group. I think I've reached out to the Women's Club maybe once or twice about, do you want me to get authors to come in and talk? And, we work with all kinds of organizations, helping them, bring authors in. And we're going to do shopping days. We raise money for organizations. We're now doing virtual book fairs for schools. So there's a lot that we're doing for the community. So with that, I can either we can make an attempt to show pictures of the store again, or I can open it up for questions or talk a little bit more about myself and why I thought about opening the bookstore, or what it's like to run a bookstore.
I think because even though we tried it on the dry run and it worked, let's not mess with it again. I think people are really enjoying, I'm getting messages from people on my cell phone that they're really enjoying listening to you. So
Oh, good.
we're your audience and we would love to hear a little more about you. And then what I can do is I can email them the videos so they can watch them at home.
Yeah, and we have them on our website and all that. I'll tell you what they are. One of them is just when we first opened the Winter Park store, I just went around with a camera and I had one of my employees put music to it, and it was just, giving you a grand tour of the whole store. So you could get that all by yourself just by stopping by. The other one is we had just formed a partnership with PBS. I donated money to them, and they are producing workbooks for families that they're giving out. And this is pre-COVID. They always do that they have the PBS Kids website. And so they were looking for somebody to partner with to sponsor and pay for these workbooks they give out to teachers. Before COVID, they would go to schools and they would do activities and hand out books for the kids. And so right now they have some other model on how they're getting 1,000 of these PBS kid workbooks out to the community. And so I just partnered with them, and they did a really beautiful, beautiful video of our partnership, and I'm really proud of that. So
we're good.
Let's see, what is it like to run a bookstore? Is that a common question that people ask? Are we nodding?
Yes.
Well, I can say that here's what I can tell you. I have had many careers. I have been an interior designer. I went to law school. I've been a lawyer. I went to school, studied social work, did that for a while, raised 3 girls, one with special needs. And with all that, this is the hardest job I've ever had, bar none. And had I known that going in, I have no idea if I would have still done it. Probably I would have, because I think that I could quit at any time, and I haven't. So for whatever reason, it's a calling, but I can say that it is a very, very hard business. It's just, the inventory is huge. The books come out from different publishers at different times of the year. Just working with authors and just retail in general. I had never even worked in retail before this. And I think retail is a really difficult profession. I think it's hard to do no matter what you're selling. So surprisingly, it's hard. But there's a lot of fun stuff about it. There's the customers are the greatest. When I was trying to decide whether or not to open a bookstore, I had been doing interior design and for corporations, and then I went to law school and did some public interest, and then I have a one with special needs, and so it was a challenging life, and I was trying to come up with an idea about what could I do now where it's a happy place and people are grateful and they're kind and they're sweet and they're wonderful and they're happy. And I was driving the car and I was listening to an NPR interview by Ann Patchett. She's an author and she owns a bookstore called Parnassus in Tennessee. And so I was listening to her, and she was talking about her bookstore, and she was saying, it's a wonderful place. People come in, they're sweet, they're wonderful, they're happy. If they came in a bad mood, they leave in a good mood. Everybody's friendly. The customers are wonderful. The authors are to die for. Authors are fantastic. As a bookseller, you have to be in love with authors. And she was just saying it was such a great place of solace and comfort for her. And I thought, okay, I like that. So I called up my husband and I said, I think I want to open up a bookstore in Winter Park, because there's no books. We haven't had a bookstore in Winter Park for 20 years. I've been complaining. And I'm one of those bookstore tourists where whenever we go to cities, I have to just check into a bookstore. And then I'm also like, my OCD at its height, my hoarders at its height is in buying books. I mean, I'm the one that would go to Barnes and Noble and walk out with 4 books and they're still sitting there and unread. So I was a perfect candidate for that. And so I just started looking into it. and put one foot in front of the other. And that's that, wanting that kind of sense of community and those kind of customers and the happiness is still there, no matter what, no matter how hard the job is. The people are still fantastic, and still wonderful. And the staff, you know, they're like, just like an owner, you know, it takes special people to be staff in a bookstore. You know, they have to love the customers and they have to love to read, and they're very, very special breed of people that work in bookstores that you don't find anywhere else. And then I'm still here.
Mhm. Mhm.
Does anybody have any questions?
Anybody have any questions?
I'm
for-
looking at the chat. I don't see any questions.
I'm not,
Anybody
but
wanna-
I've gotten a couple on my phone, and one was
Okay,
somebody who apparently loved coming and getting jigsaw puzzles at your
Oh, yeah.
store. So how did the question was, how did the start of quarantine affect you in what you chose to have on hand?
well, you're right. The puzzles got us through quarantine. So, you know, it kind of happened slowly, but then there was a day when it just stopped. I was really struggling whether to close or not, and everybody was struggling whether to leave the house. You know, it was during that period of time where they hadn't shut things down yet, but it started to really look like it was going to happen. And the day that I decided to shut the doors, because my staff was like, wanted me to close, and you know, people were running in the door, getting books and puzzles and stuff, and there was this one couple that came in that were they were going around and they were treating it like the library, because the library had closed, and they were going around and they were touching every single book, and it was driving me crazy. And I was like freaking out, and I'd walk up to her and say, "Can I help you?" No. And I mean, and then I had one of my staff she's meaner than me, like, you know, the one I sick on. And so she went there and said, you know, "Is there anything that we could do?" No. And then they were just walking around, and they never stopped. They never got the hint. And so I finally said, "That's it, we're done. It's over." And we went up to them and we said, we're closing right now for COVID.
Mhm.
And because I realized at that moment that it was no longer safe for other people and for my staff. And then what happened after that was our online sales went crazy. A lot of people started calling and sending in orders online. Some people were coming in asking for puzzles, and so I was calling publishers and gift vendors about puzzles, and I was ordering puzzles, and it was going crazy with them too because of their shipping. So they were like shutting down on shipping, or so they were saying, "Oh, you have to buy a case of 20, where normally I only maybe order 3 or 4 at a time." So here I was buying cases of 20 puzzles. We still have lots of them, and we'll be selling them at Christmas time. And so we, you know, the online business has been great. And I strongly encourage people to check us out on our online website. We wasn't that vibrant before COVID. I'd been wanting to have more of an online presence, but we were a new store and there was just still so much to learn about the physical space that I just didn't have the time to devote it. But all of a sudden, overnight, we became a web store instead of a bookstore.
Mm-hmm.
And so we just started answering web orders, and everybody else in the world was answering web orders. So then all of a sudden, you know, shipping was delayed, taking forever for books to come in. And that was just a fun time held by all.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was something. So hopefully we've kept a lot of our web customers that are still, you know, supporting us. It gave us a chance to gain the trust of people that are now buying from us on the web. We're constantly trying to improve our web store. We're doing subscriptions. We're doing recommendations. There's a form that you can fill out on our website where we ask you what you'd like. And we ask just a series of questions so that we can make a recommendation. Do you like fiction? Do you like nonfiction? Who is your favorite author? What have you read lately? And so it's a whole series of questions so that we could write back and give you a list of suggested books that you might want to read. And so we're trying to do that. We also are doing, we have newsletters for new releases that we encourage people to go onto the web and buy, and we promote virtual events with authors' books. And virtual events is like a whole nother story. I mean, I could talk for an hour about virtual events, and I guess here I am in a virtual event talking about virtual events.
That's right, because it's 2020, so why not have a storm go across Florida, you know? So one question that came in on the chat was, how do you select the books available? And I know you mentioned some of that, but
yeah,
that's got to be an art.
I mean, before we started, I said that's always the classic question. Everybody always asks that question, always. So it's an industry. There you've got the 5 major publishers, and each of them are distributors or publishers for hundreds and hundreds of imprints, Random being the largest. And they, for authors, really the story, asking us how we select our books is more like telling the story of an author. If you talking about the life of an author and what they have to go through in order to be published. And it's very similar to actors. They, you know, publishers get transcripts and they choose the ones that they're going to back. They have editors that are experts that bat 80% of the time, or, you know, bat home runs. And so they, in their processes, they decide who they're going to push for that next season. And then they tell us what to buy, and they give us catalogs and they rank them on what we should buy for the store based on who they're putting their money on. Because what they do is, when they tell you, they don't say you must buy this. They don't tell you that, but what they do is they say, we have a marketing budget of $300,000, where author's going to be on the Today Show, Fresh Air, All Things Considered, ABC, you know, so they give you that whole marketing plan. And so, you know, and they tell you it's going to be reviewed in the New York Times on such and such a date. And, you know, and so you pretty much have to buy the book to get it on the shelf, because anybody who's listening or watching is going to come looking for that book. Every once in a while, there's a Cinderella story that came out of left field, that there was an author that nobody expected was going to make it, and word of mouth, indie word of mouth pushed it, and then they became an overnight sensation, but for their own talents, not the publishers backing them. So they have seasons, and so we have to order. Because the reason that the margins are so low and why we don't pay a lot for the books is because they encourage us to send back what we don't sell. So they want us to have a shelf life of about 3 to 4 months for each book. If it hasn't become a blockbuster hit and it's still on the shelf 3 to 4 months, they want us to send it back, because obviously they've got more books they want us to put in its place. I always joke, it's like a car lot for books. You know, it's like we've, you know, so many inches of shelf space, and the publishers are fighting for shelf space. And so they want us to send books back so that they can put newer books on the shelf, so that when people come into the store to visit, a lot of times we get comments from customers saying, you know, every time I come in here, it's always something different. Everything looks so different all the time. And that's because we rotate the books on the shelf. It's part of the business. It's part of the industry. And it's how you have to do it. I can always tell when I go into other bookstores in other cities if they're doing okay. If I see a bunch of old books on the shelves and they're not returning them, I know they're in trouble.
Mm-hmm. Well, and your bookstore is great about the merchandising up front. It really draws you in. You know, the colorful, first of all, your colorful displays, and then there's some really unique gift items. And I think here, especially locally, it's great to have a shop that's got those gift items you need for a birthday, or you know, when we used to go to people's homes, hostess gifts, but you still need some fun, unique gifts that you're not going to find, you know, everywhere else, or God forbid on Amazon. And then of course, once you open the door here, you get the coffee smell. So that draws me in. I see Katie's got another question. Do you have a best-selling category of books?
Yes. On the web, we have it both on the web and in the store. I've got, if you go to the web, we have new books featured this month, best books that are selling well this month or this season. There are some books that are staples that you should always. The way that we place the books in the store in the front and how we place them pretty much is in order of how they're selling, not just in our store, but across the country. So what we do is we follow best-selling lists that are published, because we have to report our sales every week. And it goes to like the Nielsen rating, and it goes to the New York Times, and it goes to the American Bookseller Association. So there's a lot of people that get reports for our sales, and it goes to Publishers Weekly and all that kind of stuff. So there's like a half a dozen different organizations that monitor best-selling books. And so we follow what are best-selling books, and we just make sure that they're in stock. Like a perfect example of it was, I don't know if I have it here. Where the Crawdad Sings. Does everybody remember that book? Can't keep it in the store. There's another one, Educated, Tara. Oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
That book has been out almost 3 years, and it is still in hardbound. And they usually, because it's still selling like crazy, they won't put it, they don't put them into paperback until the sales start to slow down. Gentleman in Moscow, 3.5 years before it went into paperback. Okay. So we know what the bestsellers are. My thing though is that as an independent bookstore, I think that I like to recommend the gems, the ones that you couldn't go to Amazon or to Barnes and Noble's website to see what the bestsellers are. My thing is that we're always looking for that book that we can recommend. That's another thing. Indie bookstores are so important for that service alone. When you go into an indie bookstore, our selections are always different than what you see in a Barnes and Noble and what you see on Amazon. We spend a lot of time with authors calling us there's an analytic portal called Above the Tree Line, where we can look and see what other indie bookstores are selling, what they're reviewing. And so we're constantly, as a group of independent bookstores, we're always promoting authors that maybe you're not going to see on the stacks in a big box the first couple of weeks. They may make it to their piles after a couple of weeks because then they were a Cinderella story. But when people come into the store and ask me for recommendations, I go to books that I think are fantastic books, not just necessarily the bestsellers.
Mm-hmm. I know. There's one more chat here. Let's see, from Barbara Hughes. How do you keep up with books? Huh.
You want to know my secret?
Yes.
I told this to an author one time, and I thought, don't judge me, don't hate me. So we read a lot of books. We have to read a lot of books. We get a lot of advanced readers. We get a lot of books. A lot of books are sent to us digitally. So I have an iPad that I can read books digitally. So what I do is I read the first 2 or 3 chapters to see if it hooked me. And then I just keep reading until I think I understand. Like if I can't make it through the first chapter, I stop. I don't care. A lot of people say, oh, the Crawdad Sings a perfect example. I couldn't get through the first chapter, and everybody told me, oh, you have to stick with it a little longer. Well, I don't have that luxury. So I get through the first few chapters, and if it hooks me, I just keep going for a few more chapters until I feel like I know who all the characters are and where the plot's going and all that kind of stuff. And then I start cheating. And then I go and I read the last chapter, and then I start reading from the back to the front. Honestly, I mean, not like I read the last chapter, then I read the second to last chapter, then I read the third to the last chapter until I meet myself in the middle. And then at some point I stop because I've read enough, I've read enough. I know how it ends. I know whether I loved it or I didn't love it. I would not recommend this to anybody else. It's really insulting to authors when you do that. But, and then whenever there's a book that I could not put down, could not cheat, that is a book that I just go bonkers over. I mean, it becomes my staff pick. It's all I ever talk about. How many people here have read Kristen Hannon's books? Like the Great Alone, and then All the Light You Can See. Her newest one now is coming out in February. Oh my God. That's all I got to say. I read that thing from cover to cover, did not cheat at all. So another one that I didn't cheat on was The Night Circus, Morganson, which is a fantasy. I don't really read those much, but this is such a good book. So, and then I read, and then when I don't get the chance to read the book itself or skim it, I read a lot of reviews. I go to all the reviews. The one thing I never read the New York Times reviews.
Right.
I don't understand how they get their numbers, honestly. I think they get them from Amazon. Because I don't sell, James Patterson is never on the top of my best-selling list when the week it comes out. It's always our sales look totally different than the New York Times best-selling list.
Yeah, Lauren, do you think it's because your customers tend to appreciate the kinds of books that I think of your independent bookstore kind of like Enzion is to movies.
Yeah.
They're showing stuff that you're not going to see at Regal. And maybe your customers here are not the kind that will pick up a book for an airplane flight or kind of thing. They're following specific authors. They probably read different book reviews. Do you think that's part of it?
Yeah, and a lot of people, the normal reader, which is good because it keeps libraries and authors busy, is they stick with one author and they just stay with that author, and then the author tries to put something out once a year at least. And so if you have a list of favorite authors, then you if you like the Susan Mallory's or the the David Baldacci's and all that, then there's plenty to choose from, because you become you go into a relationship with these authors. You become committed to their characters, invested in their writing, which is great. Because we just had Nicholas Sparks, and we had 500. It was our first live photo op, and we had 500 people, and we were able to keep it safe the whole time. He's got some huge fans, and Susan Mallory, and so there's enough of that. So what we try to do is, yes, we have the David Baldacci book there for you, and yes, we have the John Grisham book there for you. But when someone comes to us and asks for recommendation, we usually steer away from those, because you already know about those. You know them. You're going to read it. You love it. They're classics, and they're I don't want to use the word predictable, but you can always count on them. You can count on, when I pick up a John Grisham's book and I read it for a couple of days, you can count on enjoying it. He's good enough. We all love him. We know it's going to be great, and we can count on it. So I always kind of gravitate towards the other ones.
I personally have, I tend to read the New York Times book review, and when we're in our little condo in New York City, which hope to do again after quarantine, we get it on Saturday. So you have a day ahead. If you're a person like me who reserves books at the library, I get a day's notice. But let's say, I think my favorite feature though in the New York Times book review is the page where they interview authors and they say, what's on your bookshelf or what's on your nightstand? That's where I start writing down notes.
Yes. Yeah. And then in the trade magazines that I get, Kirkus Review and Publishers Weekly, they interview authors and editors, always talking about what they're reading. And people ask me all the time, well, what's on your bookshelf? And it's so hard, because I'm reading books that are coming out in 4 months. And so I have to try to, and there was one book called, I don't know if anybody read it, called American Marriage. by, I cannot remember the author's name. I want to say Tanya.
Tamari something,
Yes,
something.
I love that book. I was talking about it for months. People would say, oh my God, let me buy it. Oh, it doesn't come out for a month. You know, it's like, I was just, couldn't stop talking about that book. Met her at a book conference, accosted her in the elevator, the poor woman. You know, I didn't know what she looked like or anything. And we were in the elevator and she told me her name and it's like, and I'm like, you know, and she's thinking, get me out of this elevator. This person is just, you know, stalking me or whatever. And I talked about that book like there was no tomorrow. And then Oprah put, so, you know, and there was the other one, Such a Fun Age. That one I read months in advance. Love that book. And that, oh my God, it's such a good book. If there's authors that I love, I'll tell you, Diane Chamberlain. Does anybody familiar with Diane Chamberlain? Isn't she great? So there's the one that was about the child where she went into the secret daughter or something, the something daughter. And she had a time travel story. You guys have to read it. I talked about that book for a year. And she's got other really good books. And what was interesting is like someone my age, the time traveling was great because they hit almost every part of history. They hit the Vietnam War, they hit 9/11. I mean, there's a lot of kids now that are in their 20s that don't remember 9/11. And so that book, and she traveled through time. It was so something daughter, the
Dream Daughter.
Yes. Oh my God. I love that book so much. You know, and so those were books that I didn't, you know, I had just gotten the advanced readers and read them. And then I learned about the author. You know, you're just kind of inundated with it. You know, you get it all the time. We used to go to, hopefully someday we'll go back to 3 conferences a year, book conferences. They're trying to do them virtual now, but I don't like them. There was one in September and it couldn't keep my interest. You know, there's too many other things to do than to sit in front of the computer. You know, it's too easy to get distracted or walk away.
Okay, I see Barbara says the Dream Daughter is one they're actually discussing for their book club today.
Today? Okay, so what do you think, Barbara? Give me a nod. Did you love it? Oh my God. Okay, so here, let me tell you a story. So whenever and I want you guys to know this. If you found a book that you adore, write the author a letter. They will write back. They absolutely love it. So I wrote her a letter and told her how much I love the book, Diane Chamberlain. I went on and on about how I love that book. And then she wrote me back. And so I thought, okay, I said, we're pen pals. So I replied back and I said, can I ask you some questions? And she said, sure. And I said, what about a sequel? Because don't you think it'd be a good sequel? What do you think? You read the end? So anyway, so I just, you know, I get lucky and I get to learn about books. I was one that Shiner, we did an event just last week, Shiner. And I love that book. And the name comes from moonshine. It's in the Appalachian, grew up in the Appalachian. It was a beautiful, beautiful story. But Amy Jo Burns is the author. I had her with Richard Farrell, who wrote Falling Woman. And I was on a panel with the American Booksellers Association selecting debut authors. And I fell in love with his book. He was a debut author and he ended up making it to the top 10 list. So I always wanted to interview him. And and so we found somebody, because it's always fun when you do virtual to have 2 authors talking to one another. And that story called Falling Woman, that is the greatest. You guys should read that. It was a woman who literally, there's a plane crash and she literally falls out of the airplane and falls into a barn and she didn't get injured at all. She didn't even have a scratch on her. And so the video of our talk is actually available on our website. You need to watch it. But and it was and so she decided to disappear instead of going back to her family. And I don't really want to ruin any more of it for you, because when I was interviewing Richard, the author, I kept saying, how can we talk about this without spoiling it? Like, what part can we talk about? Can we talk about the fact that she fell out of a plane? Yes. Can we talk about why she's falling out of the plane? Well, maybe, I mean, so watch the video on how we were able to talk about this book without spoiling it. Are there any other questions?
I think we have really, really enjoyed this talk, and for all of our members, we have, there we go, coupons that Writer's Block has done up for us, and we are going to have these. We'll have them at the Artisan Showcase, which I know you're all going to come see, and we'll have them next Thursday. And let's see. So
if you guys have a newsletter, you can even scan it and put the newsletter, because there's just a coupon code on it. And so, for the holidays.
We will do that. We actually send out email updates a couple times a week, and we send out our highlights once a month, but we will send this code to everybody. And for those of you who live closer to Winter Garden, so where Lauren is actually talking from this week today is their new store, which is going to be open in a week or two.
She's hopefully the next week.
Hopefully next week, because she wants to get all that
Christmas
shopping and Christmas shopping. Lauren, thank you so much. This has been
Thank
great,
you.
and we really enjoyed being welcomed into your stores, plural. And I'm actually going to let the meeting run for a few minutes. I'm going to mute myself and let people talk among themselves, because that's part of what we normally do. We normally break for tea, although quarantine has changed what we do. But thank you for being a part of this community and for giving us this wonderful store, and
thank you.
Helping readers like me to have a place to get independent books. So
thank you so much. Thank you all. I see what you guys look like. I can't wait to see you in the store. Please come by and introduce yourself to me. So I'm just going to go ahead and leave and let you guys have your meeting. Is that okay?
That's great. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. So for everybody who's on still, I wanted to once again say, let's see if I can get a gallery view here. There we go. There's everybody. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope that you enjoyed hearing Lauren. And I found her fascinating to listen to, and I know many of you did as well. And Barbara, that's so funny that one of her favorite books is the book you're discussing for your book probe. By the way, you can all unmute yourselves now if you want. I had you muted just so that there would be less background noise.
That's a good idea. Yeah.
Yeah. And Tara, this is This is Tara. Tara runs the events for Writer's Block, and she helped facilitate this. And we really did do a dry run where the video showed, and don't know what happened. Yeah. But we will email you the videos. Especially the one done in the store is really cool. Yeah. So.
And I'll send you a digital version of this. So you
can put it in
your newsletter.
Awesome. And Tara's going to send us a digital version of this, so everybody can come shop, either the Winter Park store or the Winter Garden store next week. Thank you. And I hope and Katie, thank you for your questions, and Barbara, thank you for your questions, and Sue, God bless you. So, all right. Anyway, so remember that next week, hopefully there will be no storm coming across, and it's the last week to bring in your stockings. And if you can't get them in, you can drop them off at Chris Bush's house. Same thing with canned goods. If you want to donate to the food bank that we're going to be sending to, and you're not coming in person, you can drop them off at Chris's office or Chris's home, sorry. Or just send us an email, and one of us can run by and pick them up for you, really, to do that. Saturday's Artisan Showcase, I am really looking forward to it. There are some really, really interesting and cool things, and they're all handmade and they're all local artists. So I hope you get a chance to stop by. Keep in mind that Park Avenue will be closed down to traffic. So come and park at, right at our building, and then you can walk over and have some lunch after you shop. But actually, Joanne Bandy's son sent me pictures today. He makes he makes these guitars out of cigar boxes. these like banjos and things out of cigar boxes. Very, very cool. So I hope you do come by, and there's lots of cool things to see. Anyway. So thank you all for coming. I know this was, we had to make the decision yesterday afternoon when it really sounded like it was going to be, 30-mile-an-hour gusts, and we didn't want anybody driving in it. It's kind of keeps changing between gray and sunny, but it's what it is. And anyway, so hopefully I will see some of you at least on Saturday, and the rest of you, we will see you on Thursday next week. It'll be in the Women's Club. No storms, please. No storms, no anything. So thank you all for coming. And if anybody wants to stay and chat, I'm going to leave this running for a minute.
Thank you, Nancy.
Hi, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you for coming.
Yes, thank you. You can say we're flexible. That's one thing. We're flexible.
Oh, golly. I think we
Golly.
pivot. That's the word. We
I'm
pivot.
well, it's giving me gray hair. Hey, Tish.
Oh, ladies. So good to see you. I counted 30 people.
Great.
Good.
30. Wow. Yeah.
That's
So
good.
thank you all. I hope to see you soon. Try to go to the Artisan Showcase. Have a wonderful time and stay well until we meet again.
Yes. Everybody
you.
stay healthy, stay safe, stay busy. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.